You know, it's funny how most of our lives seem to revolve around chasing what we call happiness, chasing meaning, chasing success, chasing peace, even chasing the very idea of awakening. We run, and we run beautifully. We run in circles so intricate that after a while we mistake the motion for progress. And yet, at some quiet moment, perhaps when the wind pauses on its way through the trees, or when you look at your own reflection in the window late at night, you begin to sense that all this running isn't really leading anywhere. You start to see that the horizon keeps moving because it was never a place you could reach. And that is where the strange adventure begins, when the one who chases begins to grow tired of chasing. The first thing they stop chasing is control. For so long, we are taught to grip the wheel, to master the tide, to bend the river to our will. We think that if only we could manage every variable, then life would at last obey our preferences. But the awakened see that life is not a machine to be operated. It's an organism, an ocean, a spontaneous dance that doesn't need to be managed to move beautifully. The need to control is the mind's attempt to make permanence out of impermanence, to freeze the flow so it can feel safe within it. Yet, in trying to hold the water still, we lose the shimmering reflection that makes it alive. When you stop chasing control, you don't become passive. You simply learn to act as part of the current instead of fighting against it. You don't stop steering. You just stop believing you're the only one steering. And then they stop chasing certainty, because certainty is another word for resistance, a refusal to be surprised by the mystery. The ego wants guarantees, but the heart knows that the beauty of living lies precisely in its uncertainty. Every breath is an act of faith, every heartbeat a pulse of trust in the unknown. The spiritually awake begin to find joy in not knowing. They realize that to be alive is to be curious, not concluded. The caterpillar never knows the shape of the wings it's weaving in the dark, yet it continues. And so do we. When you stop chasing certainty, you begin to notice how rich and tender this not knowing is, how it keeps you awake, how it keeps the world from becoming dull. You stop needing to label every cloud before it passes. You start to enjoy their changing forms. Next, they stop chasing validation, the endless hunger to be seen, approved of, affirmed. It's like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. For years, maybe lifetimes, we look into others' eyes, hoping to catch a reflection of our worth. But the spiritually awake have learned that no mirror can give them what they already are. They understand that recognition from others is sweet but fleeting, while recognition of one's own being is eternal. When you stop chasing validation, you don't become arrogant. You simply stop mistaking applause for love. You begin to give rather than grasp, to listen rather than perform. You find that the only real validation comes from the silence that doesn't need to say you're enough, because it never doubted it. They also stop chasing happiness, not because they've grown cold to joy, but because they've seen that joy is what remains when you stop demanding that life be different. Happiness, as we usually seek it, is conditional. It depends on circumstances aligning with our desires. But the spiritually awake discover that peace is unconditional. It's what you feel when you no longer divide the world into what should and shouldn't be. They don't chase happiness because they found contentment in the full range of experience, in laughter and loss, in sunlight and shadow. To them, even sadness is a sacred visitor, an invitation to feel the depth of being. When you stop chasing happiness, joy sneaks in through the side door, unannounced, simple, quiet, not as a thrill, but as a presence. And finally, they stop chasing the idea of awakening itself. For a time, the spiritual path is driven by the wish to become enlightened, to reach some final state of perfection where all confusion vanishes. But eventually, the seeker notices that the pursuit of awakening is just another disguise for the ego. The same old chase wearing holy robes. The moment you stop striving to wake up, you realize you were never asleep to begin with. The leaf doesn't try to be part of the tree, it simply is. The wave doesn't try to be one with the ocean, it always was. In that realization, all effort falls away, and what remains is simplicity. The effortless awareness that has been watching the whole play all along. And so, the spiritually awake live not as saints or sages perched above the world, but as ordinary beings who have stopped pretending that the extraordinary is somewhere else. They walk through life barefoot, touching the ground as if it were sacred because it is. They laugh more easily, cry more freely, and love without agenda. They no longer chase after life. They let life chase through them. Every sound, every silence, every breath becomes a kind of music, not to be mastered, but to be heard. Because in the end, the truth isn't something you find at the finish line of your chase. It's what you are before the race begins. And the beauty of this realization is that nothing changes, yet everything softens. The sky doesn't suddenly part with celestial trumpets. The furniture in your living room doesn't rearrange itself into mandalas of enlightenment. The world remains exactly as it is. The same creaking floors, the same hum of the refrigerator, the same tangled questions. But somehow, the texture of being shifts. There's a gentleness now, a patience in the way you move through things because you've stopped insisting that life must be any other way. You begin to live as though every sound were a kind of teaching, every ordinary moment a small ceremony of presence. And you realize that the awakening was never a destination, but the recognition of where you already stand. At first, the mind resists this. It says, surely it can't be that simple. It wants fireworks, visions, authority, a divine certificate of arrival. But simplicity offends the ego because it leaves nothing to hold on to, nothing to improve. Yet the awakened heart smiles at this confusion because it sees that the simplicity is not a lack. It's the fullness that was hidden by complication. It's the silence that was always underneath the noise of seeking. When you rest in that silence, even briefly, something ancient within you sighs in relief, as if it had been waiting countless lifetimes for you to stop pretending. And slowly, you begin to notice how the world itself seems to breathe with you. The wind that shakes the leaves is no longer outside. It is part of the same movement that stirs within your chest. The laughter of a child, the rustle of curtains, the low thunder rolling far away, all of it belongs to one continuous gesture, one immense pulse of being. The distinction between inner and outer softens like twilight, blending into night. You stop thinking of yourself as an observer of life and start feeling yourself as life observing itself. You realize that consciousness is not trapped behind your eyes. It is the same light shining through every form. This is why the spiritually awake no longer chase control or certainty or validation or happiness or even awakening itself, because all chasing presumes separation. The moment you run after something, you have already imagined it is apart from you. The chase is the illusion of distance, the echo of a thought that says, I am here, and what I need is there. But when that illusion dissolves, what is left to pursue? The hunter realizes he was the deer all along. The ocean no longer searches for its waves. And in that understanding, the whole drama of seeking folds into laughter. Cosmic laughter, the kind that shakes the foundations of seriousness and yet heals everything it touches. The curious thing about such laughter is that it doesn't come from mockery or indifference. It comes from wonder. You laugh not because life is trivial, but because it's so profoundly mysterious that no words could ever wrap it up. You see that the game was never meant to be won, but played. And in the playing, the winning is already complete. You see that the world isn't something happening to you. It's something happening as you. Every ripple of experience is the universe folding into the shape of your perception, and every letting go is the universe unfolding back into its own infinity. The more deeply you sense this, the more natural your movements become. You don't need a philosophy to tell you how to be kind, because kindness is the spontaneous fragrance of awareness when it's no longer tangled in fear. You don't need commandments or moral checklists, because when you see the unity of things, compassion is the only possible response. You no longer love because you're supposed to. You love because there's nothing else left to do. Love becomes as natural as breathing. The quiet radiance of being not directed at anyone, not withheld from anyone. And when you stop chasing, something even more astonishing occurs. Life begins to come to you, not in the sense that everything you desire drops into your lap, but in the sense that you start to notice how much was already being offered. The morning light pouring through the window, the taste of water, the way your body rises and falls as you breathe. All the things that seemed small and forgettable become holy. Gratitude no longer feels like a practice. It becomes your default perception. The difference between blessing and curse fades away because you can see how both have been carving you open toward understanding. Sometimes you still forget. Of course you do. Even the most awake among us still get lost in thought, still feel pain, still argue with what is. But now, even the forgetting has its own wisdom. Each time you lose yourself, you have another chance to rediscover yourself anew. Every fall is a bow, every confusion a curtain parting for deeper clarity. You begin to trust the ebb as much as the flow, the silence as much as the sound. The dance doesn't require perfection, only participation. And perhaps that's the final grace of awakening. It humanizes you. You don't become a detached saint or some gleaming figure floating above emotion. You become more tenderly human than ever. You cry more easily, but you suffer less. You feel the ache of the world, but it no longer poisons you, it ripens you. You see beauty in things that once annoyed you, the delays, the misunderstandings, even the heartbreaks, because they all shimmer with that same ineffable glow of existence. You begin to realize that everything, even the mistakes, even the so-called flaws, are part of the music. And the music never stopped playing. You just stopped listening for a while. There is a deep humility that comes with this seeing, not the humility of self-belittlement, but the humility of wonder, the kind that bows before the sheer magnitude of the mystery. You realize that no amount of knowledge can capture it, no belief can contain it, no ritual can manufacture it. The mystery is not out there waiting to be solved. It is what is looking out of your eyes right now. It's what is hearing these words, feeling this breath, being this moment. The spiritually awake live in reverence of that mystery, not by worshiping it from afar, but by embodying it in every gesture. And what's extraordinary is that once you stop chasing all those things, control, certainty, validation, happiness, awakening, you discover you never actually lost them. Control transforms into effortless participation. Certainty becomes a deep trust in uncertainty. Validation blooms into unconditional self-acceptance. Happiness expands into the quiet joy of being. And awakening, well, awakening dissolves into the very simplicity of being alive. The things you once chased are no longer goals. They are the qualities of the space you've been standing in all along. So perhaps the great secret is not how to awaken, but how to notice that you already are. To see that the wave doesn't have to rise higher to be ocean, it only needs to recognize itself. And when that recognition dawns, everything, even the most mundane, gleams with divinity. You can't help but smile at the absurdity of it all, the way we build entire civilizations of thought trying to reach what was never absent, the way we search the stars for the light that's been shining behind our own eyes the entire time. And maybe, after all the searching, after all the trying, the only thing left to do is to sit quietly and listen, to feel the hum of existence vibrating through your bones and realize that it has always been whispering, "Welcome home."